The United States and China have been locked in a growing rivalry for decades, a competition that's shaped everything from global trade to technological innovation. Unlike some doomsday predictions, this rivalry is evolving into something deeper and more strategic, a cool war. But what does that mean? Unlike traditional conflicts, this isn't about armies marching or missiles flying. Instead, it's a battle fought through influence, economics, and technology. From artificial intelligence to rare earth materials, and from supply chain networks to diplomatic influence, this war is redefining how nations compete and cooperate in the modern era. In this video, we'll explore how this Cold War between the US and China is shaping the future, and ultimately, who will control the world by 2030, the United States or China? Let's find out. The story begins in the aftermath of World War II, when the US emerged as a global superpower and China, devastated by years of war and internal strife, began rebuilding under communist rule. The two nations stood on opposite sides of the Cold War divide, with the US supporting Taiwan's nationalist government while China aligned itself with the Soviet Union. But by the 1970s, cracks in the Soviet-China alliance opened a door for the US and China to engage in a cautious partnership. Diplomatic breakthroughs like Nixon's visit to Beijing in 1972 signaled a shift, with both nations finding common ground and countering Soviet dominance. This cooperation laid the groundwork for China's economic reforms under Deng Xiaoping, which transformed the country into a manufacturing powerhouse and set the stage for its emergence as the world's second largest economy. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the cooperative spirit has all but disappeared. Instead, the two nations now find themselves locked in a competition that spans every facet of global power, from economics to military dominance. Now, China's rise has positioned it as the most significant challenger to the US-led global order. As China has grown into a global economic and military force, it has begun to challenge the systems and structures long dominated by the United States. But instead of waging a conventional war, this competition is playing out in subtler, more strategic ways, through influence, innovation, and control over critical resources. Consider artificial intelligence, for instance. Both nations recognize AI as crucial for controlling critical industries, from healthcare and transportation to national defense. The competition also extends to transformative technologies like quantum computing and 5G, where dominance could determine future global leadership. These sectors are critical not only for economic gains, but for national security, with both nations investing heavily to outpace the other. China's ambitious Made in China 2025 is an initiative designed to transform China from a low-cost manufacturer into a global leader in high-tech industries. In response, the US has implemented sanctions targeting Chinese tech giants like Huawei and restricted access to vital semiconductor technologies. These sanctions are not merely economic tools. They are strategic maneuvers designed to curb China's technological ascent. Trade dominance is another battleground. The US has long relied on its status as the global financial hub, while China has steadily expanded its influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. In response, the United States has worked to strengthen alliances like the Quad, officially known as the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. This informal strategic partnership, comprising the United States, Australia, India, and Japan, focuses on securing critical supply chains for essential resources, particularly rare earth metals, which are crucial for high-tech manufacturing. However, this competition extends beyond economics and technology. It also permeates military realms. In the Indo-Pacific region, China has invested heavily in modernizing its navy, constructing artificial islands in the South China Sea, and expanding its missile capabilities. Meanwhile, the US has reinforced its alliances with countries like Japan and Australia, deploying advanced military assets to counter what it perceives as growing Chinese aggression. The balance of power is shifting, transforming the Indo-Pacific into a front line of this cool war. The outcome is a complex web of strategies and counter-strategies where neither side can afford to back down. This conflict transcends trade deficits or military drills. It centers on reshaping the global order itself. But what happens when economic competition spills over into geopolitics? When trade disputes and tech battles are no longer enough to settle the score? The answer lies in the growing risk of escalation, a shift from a cool war to something that looks more and more like a new Cold War. On one side, the United States champions its ideals of free enterprise and individual liberties. On the other hand, China emphasizes long-term state planning and collective growth. While both nations have built their modern strategies on these foundations, the friction between them increasingly reflects an ideological divide. This divide is most evident in Taiwan, the most volatile flashpoint of this cool war. Taiwan represents more than just a contested island. It is a symbol of opposing worldviews. For Beijing, it is a rogue province that must eventually be reunified by force if necessary. For Washington, Taiwan stands as a critical ally and a beacon of democratic governance in the Indo-Pacific. China's military activities around Taiwan have escalated dramatically in recent years. Large-scale military exercises, frequent airspace incursions, and an expanding missile arsenal paint a clear picture of Beijing's intent. These actions not only threaten Taiwan, but also challenge the U.S. presence in the region. The United States has responded by reaffirming its commitment to Taiwan, deploying naval assets, and bolstering alliances in the Indo-Pacific. Alliances like the Quad are at the forefront of this response. While officially focused on maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific, the Quad's actions, such as joint military drills and securing critical trade routes, underline its role as a bulwark against China's regional ambitions. The Cold War analogy becomes increasingly clear: two powerful blocs vying for dominance with smaller nations caught in the middle. The question now is whether this competition will remain cold or escalate into something more direct, or whether a third path is possible. The idea of a G2 framework, where the US and China coordinate on global governance, has often been discussed as a potential path forward. Such a partnership could stabilize relations and set a precedent for tackling global crises collectively. Climate change, for instance, presents an opportunity for partnership. China, as the world's largest emitter, and the United States, with its leadership in clean energy innovation, could collaborate to combat a crisis that affects them both. Similarly, their mutual dependence on global trade networks encourages cooperation to ensure economic stability and avoid disruptive shocks. While the G2 concept could foster collaboration, mistrust in competing ambitions, such as disputes over intellectual property or competition in clean energy technologies, make this vision more of an ideal than a likely reality. Even where interests align, domestic political pressures in both countries make deeper cooperation challenging. For example, while joint climate initiatives might benefit both nations, the competition to dominate renewable energy markets like solar panels or electric batteries remains fierce. But can this delicate balance of rivalry and collaboration define the global order, or will one superpower emerge as the dominant force by 2030? There's no straight answer. Economically, China's closing the gap. While projections suggest it could overtake the US in GDP by 2030, recent data shows that challenges like a slowing recovery and demographic issues could delay this milestone. Meanwhile, the US still dominates global finance, attracting foreign investment and shaping the world's economic rules. But the real battleground is technology. From quantum computing to artificial intelligence, both nations are pouring resources into securing dominance in fields that will define the future. Diplomacy adds another layer. The US relies on long-standing alliances like NATO and the Quad, while China has built economic influence through the Belt and Road Initiative. But there's a twist: BRICS. China is positioning itself as a leader in the global south, reshaping global power dynamics. A multipolar world could emerge, where regional powers like India, the EU, or even coalitions like BRICS hold sway, limiting the influence of any single nation. Militarily, the Indo-Pacific is the front line. China's growing navy and missile systems challenge U.S. dominance, but the U.S. is reinforcing its alliances with Japan and Australia, ensuring its presence remains strong. The battle for global leadership between the U.S. and China is far from over, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Is the world heading toward a new era of Chinese dominance? Will the U.S. hold its ground? Or are we looking at a future where no single nation reigns supreme? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.